The Sega Dreamcast. Before its time, and yet too late to market.
The history of the Dreamcast is an episode unto itself, and not the story I'm telling today. The focus of this episode is the Hanzo VGA box by Behar Bros. There have been a number of VGA cords and boxes for the Dreamcast, including an official option from Sega. But the Hanzo sits at that oh-so-sweet crossroads between price and performance. For reasons that'll later be explained, this episode will serve as a review of sorts for 4 different products, as well as a general overview of Dreamcast video options.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's go over why we should care about VGA in the first place.
For the launch of the PS2, Sony pushed the premise that their system would destroy the Dreamcast on visuals. We could argue all day about which one produced a prettier picture, but the verdict is in on at least one aspect.
An unmodded Dreamcast is capable of a much sharper image. The reasons for that are many, but a big contributor is the fact that the Dreamcast utilizes VGA, a format that was making fine text legible on PCs long before the birth of modern HD.
Using any of the many VGA options available on Dreamcast will improve on what's possible using standard RCA cables. Here's a bit of video to illustrate my point.
The VGA images pictured here are from a Tomy VGA cable, readily available on Amazon. This cable served me quite well before eventually developing vertical lines and needing replacement.
So, if any old VGA cable will improve the picture from your Dreamcast, why choose Hanzo? In a word, excellence.
The Behar Bros craft each of these devices by hand. The build quality is exceptional, and they've included a wealth of options. The Hanzo allows for variable VGA and RGB output, optional scan lines, and fine-tuning for those options. The build quality means that you know you're getting the best possible picture from your Dreamcast.
And that brings us to it. Just how good can the Dreamcast look via VGA? Turns out that's a tricky question. Here's why.
Not all displays have a VGA input. As luck would have it, my projector does. As luck would also have it, my capture card does not.
Most of my consoles go to my receiver and are converted to HDMI, which my capture card handles with ease.
The issue is, my receiver doesn't have a VGA input either, so I need another way to get VGA over HDMI.
Elegant solutions exist for doing just that. The Behar Bros even make a box with HDMI out. Problem solved, right? Not exactly.
Neither my capture card nor my receiver will accept the Dreamcast's native 480p output over HDMI. So I need a device that will both convert the VGA signal of the Hanzo to HDMI and upscale it to a resolution that my receiver and capture card are happy with.
The first solution that I happened upon is a scalar-up converter featured in the video of another Dreamcast enthusiast, which I'll link to in the description below.
It had all the basic features I was looking for. VGA up conversion, upscaling to HD, and options to adjust the aspect ratio to a proper 4:3. The device I'm describing is the LKV351 Pro.
On all accounts, I'd recommend this scaler to anyone looking for an easy-to-find, mostly commendable solution. Here's a look at how Hanzo footage compares to composite when running through the 351.
The improvement is fairly noticeable. The problem comes when trying to compare footage from the Hanzo to another VGA source. Here's a look at both the Hanzo and the Tomy cables featured earlier, side by side. To look at this comparison, you might only notice that the Tomy cables provide a slightly warmer picture, and that the edges on 2D elements are a little sharper on the Hanzo. Because the 351 also features composite and component inputs on top of VGA, I was able to capture some examples of how its upscaling compares to my other equipment. Upscaling composite, the 351 holds its own with my standard receiver setup. Things get a little different when we move on to other signal types. Through component, VGA's next door neighbor, the 351 is handily outperformed by the Denon 1913. One of the major issues on display here is the lack of contrast in the 351's standard setting, which results in a fairly dark image. Games like Resident Evil Code Veronica are almost unplayable without adjusting your display. The 351 Pro does feature a vivid picture mode, but this setting overexposes portions of the screen to the point where visual detail is lost.
At this point, it became clear that for a halfway decent review of the Hanzo, I was going to need a VGA up converter that could do the Dreamcast justice.
Enter the Atlona AT-HD 510 VGA. For what it lacks in catchiness, it more than makes up for in flexibility.
This device is one in a line of scalers made famous in the Dreamcast community by Adam Koralik on his Keep Dreaming series. The 510 is the pricier of several options from Atlona, and for that reason, I'd never even considered it previously.
Today, with many businesses ditching their older VGA equipment altogether, I was able to swoop this unit up for around $50, the same price that I paid for the 351 Pro. Since it supports component over VGA, I'm able to compare its upscaling against both the 351 and my Denon receiver, and the results are positive. The 510 produces a very sharp picture, and while it is fairly noisy, that could just as well be the result of the breakout cable I needed in this setup. Overall, the Atlona is a clear step up from the 351. There's a striking difference in clarity and definition on display, and the 510 even holds up favorably to my AVR, which, as illustrated in a previous episode, has a great track record with 480p content. Results over VGA with the Dreamcast are even better. Games played with the Hanzo are sharp, vibrant, and truly a sight to behold. The brightness setting on the Atlona eliminates the issue of darker titles over VGA. Much better. Video run through the Tomy cable also sees an improvement with the 510.
Which brings us to the thing we've all been waiting for.
VGA Dreamcast Showdown.
We already established that VGA gets us the best picture a Dreamcast can manage, and we found a scaler capable of delivering that pristine footage to a capture device. Now it's time to see just how much of a factor the Hanzo plays in that equation.
Here are some side-by-sides for visual comparison. You'll be forgiven for not noticing the differences right away. The improvements offered by the Hanzo are subtle, and by the time you're watching this, YouTube will probably have chewed through any visible evidence. With the help of some close-ups, we can see that color separation and contrast are improved on the Hanzo. Just look at those lovely shrubberies. Finer details that are lost on the Tomy become more apparent. And assets take on a little more clarity with the Hanzo the closer you move in.
I'm gonna be completely honest here. Before analyzing the footage, I was starting to doubt the difference that the Hanzo makes.
But the differences are legitimate, even if you need a pretty epic zoom before you pick them apart. To be fair to the Tomy cables though, we really are picking at straws here. Unless you're playing on an unusually large display, most of us aren't going to spot the differences with the naked eye. When it comes to Dreamcast video options, moving to VGA from RCA gets you the most bang for your buck. Investing in a quality scaler comes in at a close second, and for the absolute enthusiast, the Hanzo brings you reliability and that last little ounce of polish.
In summary, the biggest move you can make for your Dreamcast is switching to VGA. Any VGA. But if you want to take it to the next level, the Behar Brothers are there to help you do it. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Have a good one.